Hello, welcome to Altcoin Buzz Trading. I'm Randy. Today we're going to be taking a look at Bitcoin, Thorchain, Mask Network, and Tellor today. So let's get right to it. Oh yeah, stay tuned for your TA tip of the day. All right, so BTC over here going through motions through the weekend. We talked about that on Friday. Really didn't do much of anything, just kind of went very sideways. We ended up with very narrow ranges, and I'm going to say very many more times through some narrow ranges right here, popping up a little bit. The thing with Bitcoin at the moment is it's just trying to consolidate this larger drop, and so all this small action really doesn't mean a whole lot. The main thing to note for me at least is that we're not breaking or attempting to break any range in a major way. Even the move down over here was met with some support. The move up here was met with some resistance. And so from that perspective, we're going nowhere and fast. So the question becomes, how do we break and when do we break? Well, if I knew the answers to those questions, I wouldn't be doing these videos. But the answer to answer those questions is whenever it breaks. You just have to be here when it does. And that's the whole thing about trading that most people don't understand, is that it's not about knowing what every asset's going to do all the time. It's about understanding the possibilities and negations of said possibilities and then what to do next. And with that comes a lot of experience, but I'm here to help you with that a little bit. But you're going to have to learn a lot of that stuff on your own, to be honest with you. The best traders I know have really great ways to deal with uncertain circumstances, and that's what Bitcoin's presenting us with right now, is an uncertain circumstance. Tried to go higher, didn't do it. Tried to go lower, didn't do it. Tried to go lower here, didn't do it. Tried to go higher over the weekend, couldn't do it. Now it's trying to go higher again. Will it do it? Well, it's hard to say. We have these tools to try to help us out. Volume aggregation tool that I have here shows quite a bit of selling pressure, and then we're bouncing back up a little bit higher. So just a mixed signal scenario. You don't have to know what the market's going to do all the time. Like I said, what situation are we in and how do we potentially get out of it? How does the market get out of the situation? Because it's not about us necessarily, unless you find yourself upside down in a big trade. It's more about what is the market going to do. And right now, to be honest with you, I'm basically cash, perfectly happy being in cash. Cash is a position. All right, let's move on to Thorchain, also known as RUNE. We've been discussing this one at length. As a matter of fact, recently we had the big rally over here, giving us really just a tremendous move up. I can't even see the percentage, it's so high. It looks like a little over 100%. And then we saw some topping action moving lower through our inclining trend line, leading to a pretty decent decline back into some support levels, which we did discuss, about 18% down. We were trying to undercut them for a little bit, and then we've bounced back. We have lower highs here, indicating that the bounce is really just kind of feeble at the moment. My volume aggregation tool here shows us that the sellers are in control and the buyers are just really along for the ride. That being said, we have been able to form a higher low here over the weekend right now, and at the moment we're really just waiting to see what the next thing is going to be. What's the next pattern going to be? What are we doing at the moment? So one thing I've been telling people is if you're down here and you like that profit, which has been about 10% give or take, depending on when you got in, that's about 16% from our real breakdown point. It's okay to take profits, even if you don't have the full measured move. I know we did discuss a measured move down towards this level, or even further down than that with a full-blown retracement of that larger move, but we are definitely having a pretty good stall here. At the same time, the trend isn't broken. So what do you do? Well, if you're not in this trade, there's nothing to do. If you are in this trade, consider where you're going to take profits. Are you going to wait for the larger pullback? If so, if you're going to wait for the larger pullback, you're seeing a smaller pullback right now. The question is, where are you going to exit this? Because if it reverses all the way back up on you, you don't want to take a trade that's making money and turn it into a trade that's losing money. So that's something we definitely don't want to do with RUNE. But there are a few fundamental things going on. I guess there's a few things going on with some, let me see, wallet integrations with RUNE. Also integrating with some new chains. So that could be one of the reasons we saw this bullish pressure. And so if this is just a retracement, we could form a bullish pattern here on RUNE, and looks like we'll try to stay with this one, as it is one of the chains in the market doing some interesting things. All right, next up, let's take a look at Mask Network. This is not doing anything interesting. It actually has a pretty pronounced bear flag on it. If you remember a few days ago, we talked about H patterns. An H pattern, if you don't remember, is one that drops down, forms a lowercase h, and usually ends up continuing through. Your sell signal is essentially the low right here, the low on the left side of this H. Well, a lot of those things bounced. We haven't really broken through those H patterns, and this is one of those, forming a slightly different pattern looking like a bear flag. A bear flag can evolve from an H, and this one is doing exactly that. So let's line up a trade for this. Now, first thing you have to realize is you have to wait for the drop, right? You have to wait for the actual entry point. So our entry point is going to be on this trend line right here, and that looks like it's about the 256. Our stop loss here is a little bit wider than I'd like it to be at about 5.6, and we'll take another one of those measured moves, which we said about 57 times last week. So there's a measured move, and let's kind of move our target down in that area, which is going to be a 26% trade for 4.76 risk reward ratio. If this triggers. Now, that's the key. Now, last week, remember, we did this a bunch. If this triggers. A lot of them didn't trigger, and that's okay. A couple of them did, and we had some stop outs. That's okay, too. A couple of them we took early, had some small stop outs. That's okay, too. The thing is to not do that too much. You don't want to have too many stop outs. So essentially what happened last week is the market failed to move lower, which makes our situation even more difficult to deal with and a little bit confusing. So what you're dealing with on this particular trade is, now that we've gone through that segment, this one is still showing that it's pretty weak. You can see we're dealing with lower highs across the top here, which is why I have our stop over here at this prior high. Now, if we do get a bounce back, and once again, if you feel like taking a lower risk trade, this is something you could do. This is not a good looking pattern. A few of the ones that we discussed last week have bounced up and into more choppiness and less of a concise pattern. This one, though, still has the concise pattern, so we're going to stick with ones like this. So this is your trade potentially on the table for mask. 4.76 risk reward ratio on this one with a stop at about 2.70, 2.71. All right, and after that is Tellor Network. Never knew this coin's name. Tellor Network. This one's interesting. I followed this one yesterday on my other show, and we were putting in a stalling candle here on some elevated volume, generally a sell signal, but you need to wait to see what that does. And this gave us another selling signal. If you look at my volume aggregation tool here, sellers in control yet again. But the thing is that we're finding support. So this one I'm kind of counter trade what I just talked about. So we're pretty close to support this one. So I think this has a potential long trade setup on it. You almost have to take this thing immediately. Your stop is at the trend line. If you want to tighten it actually to underneath recent lows, that's a 4% stop loss. Now this is a BTC pair. I do want to remind you of that. So this requires Bitcoin basically enable to trade it, and you will gain Bitcoin. So you'll be gaining Bitcoin if you do take this trade. If you try to trade this on the USD pair, not the end of the world, but you'll just be gaining USD on that one. Okay, so here we have it. Stop at about the 216 level. And if we continue sideways here, you can actually raise the stop with this trend line. Now let me show you where I drew this trend line. I go all the way from the bottom here, candle on the 25th, and I give it, I'm actually off a little bit on my trend line. Let's actually tighten that up. If you tighten that up a little bit, we're actually bouncing right off the trend line. So that gives us a bit of a tighter stop actually, right there. So stop at the 189 Satoshi level. Entry would be almost right now. And your exit here, now you can get greedy and try to go all the way to the tip of these tops over here. You could also try to exit somewhere in the middle range here. It's going to be tricky because there's a lot of distribution in this area. So let's lower this a little bit. This is a 3-to-1 risk reward trade, 10% potential gain, 3.62% potential loss. So your stop is at 189 Satoshis. Your gain is at 558 Satoshis. So there you go. So this is a potential trade, but this is a counter it's kind of counter trade, I think, because we are in an uptrend, so I guess it's with that trend, but at the same time, we do show some stalling action, so we could try to roll over. So this is one you're going to want to take profits on early if you take the entry on something like this. So, all right, ladies and gentlemen, time for your TA tip of the day, and it's patience. It's patience. I know some of the things I talk about have nothing to do with technical analysis, but you're dealing with trading. It's not just technical analysis. If you're learning TA, you're learning it to trade, and patience is something you have to learn while trading and doing technical analysis, as a matter of fact. We can go back to RUNE. RUNE's a pretty good example of being patient, letting something play out, and even now that we're in this trade, being patient in the trade. But once you have a signal, don't be patient. You have to be patient until you get a signal. And then when you get a signal, you can't be patient. You have to act immediately. So patience is counterbalanced in trading with immediate action. But until you get that moment of immediate action, you have to be patient. Otherwise, what you're doing is setting yourself up for failure. If all you're doing is constantly taking trades and taking losses, that means you're not being patient enough. Let the market come to you with your signals, okay? If these H pattern signals aren't working, don't take them. That's okay. If your bullish patterns aren't working, don't take them. That's okay. You have to be patient and wait for the better market to come. There's always a better market to come. It's just sometimes you have to wait for it. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that's all I got for you today. Thanks for joining me on Altcoin Buzz Trading. I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.